Hello and welcome to the Hacash Pool Miner Setup Guide. In this video, we'll be going over how to create a HAC wallet, how to choose between a Windows miner versus a Linux VPS miner, and of course, how to set up both the Windows miner on your Windows machine or the Linux miner on a VPS. First step, if we follow along in this guide, is to create a wallet. Here we will be directed to this page where we are able to create a new wallet with a password that we create or not. Allow me to show you what happens if you just click Create Address without entering a password into this field. You're given your main address, which can be publicly shared safely. You'll be given your public key, which again can be shared publicly, but best not to. There's really no reason for it, as all transactions can be handled through your public address here, which is also displayed on the public blockchain. And then lastly, your private key. You should never share this. If one was to gain access to your private key, they also gain access to your wallet. If we create a wallet with a password, the password acts as if it was the private key. So you'll want to pick a very strong password using upper, lowercase, and special characters. So we'll pick insanely strong password, which yours should obviously be stronger than this one, and we'll create address. Again, we're given the same three outputs, but now the wallet is protected by the password that we provided, which is going to be just as functional as the private key. For these two inputs, you can just save them to a notepad or Word document on your computer safely. Your private key should never be digitized. That is, you shouldn't save it on a notepad, a Word document, you shouldn't email it, you shouldn't take a picture of it. As soon as it's in the digital world, it's more easily compromised. Instead, write it down with a pen and paper. When you write it twice to ensure that you don't have any typos or your penmanship is bad. If you do not accurately record this key, you could lose access to your wallet. That is one of the benefits to using a password, because the password acts as your private key. As long as you can remember your password, you are essentially remembering your private key. But private keys are insanely secure, but also very difficult to remember. So that'll be a judgment call on your part to decide whether or not you want very high security, but impossible to remember, or slightly less security, but easier to remember with a password. If you decide to go the route of private key only, I would suggest that you write it down on two separate pieces of paper and store them separately in the event that your home is broken into, or fire, or flood, or some other act of God where you would lose that piece of paper. So now that we have our wallet address here, we'll save that for later. We'll move next to actually setting up our miner. Here we have two options, the VPS mining guide or our Windows OS mining guide. First, we'll cover the VPS mining guide. Some clear benefits to using a VPS is that it will never shut down, right? Your Windows machine might need to restart, you might need to be working on it, you might lose power to your home, something like that, and your Windows miner will stop working. If your computer shuts down, you are not mining. With a VPS, it is up 99.9% of the time. In fact, that's part of their service level agreement to you, both from Vaulter, DigitalOcean, and other VPS providers. The other benefit is that you can run a VPS miner at full cores, meaning the only thing that it's doing is mining HAC. If you were to mine on your Windows machine, well, your CPU would be busy mining HAC and be very slow to do everything else that you would want it to do if you're using it to browse the internet or answer emails or work on graphic designs. Whatever else you're doing on that computer, it wouldn't be able to do because it's busy mining HAC. Additionally, here with the VPSs, we have two referral links. There's no gimmicks or catches here. The only stipulation is that you spend $25 in the very first month of creating your account, and in return, both these providers will provide you $100 in VPS mining credits. So pretty much spend $25 in the first month, and they'll just give you another $100 to spend on additional mining capacity. So for this guide, we're going to use Vaulter. And here's the general steps to create an account, and then to deploy a new server. And here now we see our screens match. We'll be doing cloud compute. As for server location, it really doesn't matter. I always just like to pick whatever's closest to me, but again, it does not really matter. The server type most certainly does matter. It has to be Ubuntu, And we have tested it on all three versions, 16.04, 18.04, and 20.04, and the miner program works on all three. However, this being the newest and therefore will have the longest lifespan, we suggest using Ubuntu 20.04. For the server size, pick whatever you can afford. If you can only afford $5 a month, do that one. If you can afford 40, great. If you can afford $320 a month, you should probably be buying your own mining rig. That is an insane amount of money for only 16 cores. Additionally, I've been asked, is it better to have more cores? And the answer is yes. The more CPU cores you have, the better your machine will mine for HAC, which will then produce more HAC into your wallet address. The next question that I get often is, can I just do 4 $5 a month, which will equal 4 separate VPSs with 1 CPU each, or is it better just to get the 4 CPU for twice the dollar amount per month? And the answer is, it depends. There's a little bit of luck when it comes to block finding. Your computer's trying to solve a very complex hash algorithm, which is just a big math problem. And the more cores it has to think, the faster it's going to be able to try and solve that hash. With this way, you have 4 separate computers thinking separately. Even though it's the same amount of CPUs, they're all thinking separately. And so they're not able to solve the problem as quickly as a single 4 CPU when all 4 CPUs are thinking together. That said, I've seen small miners get insanely lucky, and in the first day they've found 5 blocks, right? And so I think overall, the longer you run, the more CPUs are better. However, there is luck involved. So if you can only afford $10 a month, I would definitely recommend running 2 of these VPSs rather than paying $20 a month for this. But once you start getting up to bigger dollar amounts, I have seen a noticeable increase. With all of that said, my tests only lasted 2 full days, 48 hours. So that is not a very long test. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback on this and see what is the optimal mix of CPU to cost to see what's the best ROI. And then lastly, we can give our miner a label. We'll call it My Miner. And this label is just for your own organization. This is what will be displayed on your Vaulter dashboard. So if you're running multiple nodes or multiple miners, it'll be easy to keep track of them. Then click Deploy Now. Once you click Deploy Now, your VPS will begin setup. That should take no more than 5 to 10 minutes. And in the meantime, we'll want to download the appropriate application so that we can access your rented VPS from your Windows machine or whatever machine you're running. Here, these are the 2 separate guides for how to access your VPS. I'm running Windows, so we'll go through the Windows guide. Here are instructions to download PuTTY, which is the program that will allow you to access your VPS. And here are the instructions to do so. Here we see that our VPS is still setting up, but we are able to see the IP address and the password, which is exactly what we need to access it. So here we'll copy the IP address and enter it into the hostname field in PuTTY program. Additionally, we'll go over to connection and set it to 5 to ensure that timeouts are least likely. And then lastly, we could give it a name, My Miner, or whatever name you would prefer. Once you have all of that, click Save, and the settings will be saved in your PuTTY program permanently. We can click Load, and then Open. When you open your VPS the very first time, it'll give you the security alert. You can click Yes safely. Here is our PuTTY console that is trying to connect to our Vaulter VPS. So we'll want to log in as root, which is the username listed in the Vaulter dashboard. Then it'll ask for password. You can either copy and paste it by dragging and Control-C, or you can just use the handy copy password. One important thing about PuTTY and the console, there is no Control-V. Right-click is how you paste. If you Control-V, it will spit out an error or execute a different command. Right-clicking is how you paste. Another important note when you're entering your password is nothing is displayed as you're entering your password. So when you have the PuTTY program open and a green solid box, right click. And nothing has happened. I've already clicked right click, but it has been pasted. Now click enter, and it'll log us in. So even though you don't see anything, it is in fact happening. That only applies to your password. Every other paste that you execute in the PuTTY program, it will show it to you. Only your password does not move. So now this is the terminal for our VPS that we're actually running. So we're able to communicate with the machine that we're renting from Vultr. Let's follow along in the guide. And here are the commands to install and run the mining program. So first we want to install a program that will unzip downloaded zip files. So we copy it over here, enter into our console, and right click, not Control V, click enter. It'll do some thinking, and it'll return root at Vultr when done, just like that. So now we know that it's done. Next, we want to download the mining program zip. Boom, that was fast. Then we want to unzip that downloaded zip folder. And then lastly, for housekeeping and just generally keeping things tidy, we'll want to remove the zip folder that we just unzipped. We don't need the original zip folder anymore. And so we're saying remove that file zip. Now, just to double check that we're in the right spot and we've done everything right, we can type ls. And that'll give us all the file names in the directory, of which we have two. We have the mining program itself, and we have the mining configuration file. So we're in good shape. Next, we'll want to enter the nano text editor to edit the config file. So all we're saying here is open text editor for this file name, which we also see up there. Now we're in the text editor for the config file. You will want to change the rewards address because this is where your HAC will be deposited as you mine. So we'll go back to our wallet and we'll copy our address. Delete the old one. That's not your address. You don't want to be sending it to somebody else. And then paste in your own. Next is the supervene or cores. Right here, by default, it's 8 cores. We don't have 8 cores. We only have 6. So you'll want to put in the number of cores that you actually plan on using to mine. In this case, we're using 6. Once you're done with your 2 edits in this file, click Control X, then press Y, then press Enter. And we've now successfully saved the nano program. If we wanted to check it out again, we could, just to make sure everything's saved. Fantastic. Moving along in the guide. Next, we want to make sure that the mining program itself has the appropriate permissions in the VPS. So here we're saying, change the permissions of this exact file name. And now, if we click ls just to make sure, we'll notice that the command file or the executable file for the pool worker has now turned green as opposed to what color it was above. Green just means that it is in fact executable. So we are ready to actually launch our miner now. To do so, we want to launch it on a different screen. You will do this all in the same console, but in this console we want to open up essentially a new tab. So to do that, we type in screen. Press enter, and it'll give you this welcome message. Press enter again. Then lastly, this is the command to actually turn on your miner. Period / then the miner executable name. Please note, as Hacash Pool does update its mining software, this date might change. So the file name might change. You can always tell by typing in ls, and whatever this file name is, that's what you want to enter. You want to enter period / that file name. So this guide is up to date right now, but this video and guide may not be up to date if we update the mining pool software. So now we click enter, and as soon as you see connecting, do mining height, this block height, you are now mining. You can double check that by going to miner.hacashpool.com and looking for our address. Our address ends with X6T. X6T. There we are. There's our address. That's the number of miners that we have pointing to that address. This is our hash rate, which hasn't been calculated for this block period yet for anybody. The number of blocks that you have found, the number of HAC that you have been successfully paid for mining, and the number of HAC that you will be paid once they are confirmed. Back to our console, we want to make sure that we can successfully exit from the terminal without terminating this program. To do so, press Control-A, Control-D. That will detach the screen or that new tab that we were working on. You can now safely close the program by clicking the X or typing in exit and hitting enter. If you're paranoid and just want to make sure, you can type in top to bring up all the processes that are running in the VPS. And here we see pool worker or pool were, and it's running all 6 CPUs at 100%. CPUs at 100%. We know we're good. Again, you can close it out from here safely. If you ever wanted to just take a look at your miner thinking, you can type screen space -R. That is essentially saying bring up that tab that I previously closed. There it is. And now it's already looking for the next block. But once you're in this tab, you always need to be sure that you do Control-A, Control-D to safely detach. Then you can close this without worrying about if it's going to terminate the mining program. Now we'll cover the Windows mining option, which is substantially easier. First, we're instructed to download this file, which will go into your download folder or wherever your browser saves the downloads by default. Once downloaded, right-click and then extract all. You'll be presented with the miner program executable and the configuration file. For the configuration file, it's the same process as before. You'll want to replace with your address, and enter in the number of cores you plan to mine with your Windows machine. To figure out how many cores your computer has available to mine, type in system information in your Windows OS search panel. And here, look for processor. It'll always give you a CPU, the speed, and then here the number of cores. So in this situation, if we wanted to run the CPU at full core, we'd type in 10. Once done, save the file, and you are now ready to begin mining. We go into the mining executable and double click. The very first time you run the program, it'll say, hey, I don't have a valid software certificate from this program that's trying to run. Of course not. This is a public proof of work coin. We don't have a Windows certificate filed with them. So you click on more info. The publisher is unknown because just like Satoshi, the HAC creator is not known. And run anyways. And there it is. As soon as you see connecting, do mining, block height, you know that it's mining. If you close this program, the miner will stop running. If you shut down your computer, the miner will stop running. You have to have this program open for it to continue mining. And that concludes our tutorial and the step-by-step guide. If you have any feedback or questions, by all means, feel free to message me on Telegram or Twitter. I'm more than happy to help. Take care, guys.